Okay, so we are live now, and I will just hand it straight to Paolo and Thaís because I don't have much to say.
Hi.
Hi. So I'll try to get it going. Yeah, I'll try to start things. I guess that given the we are trying we are trying different formats for every session of these seminars, and I would say that given the nature of these seminars, this specific seminar format, maybe the best introduction I could do was just to read, okay, Thaís had her PhD completed, blah, 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 like somehow a detached introduction. Because in the other formats, I thought that the introduction would be a good way to start the conversations. But in this format, for Thaís, what she will do is to present for 30 minutes her PhD work and other work associated with it. And then we will open to debate. So this introduction to start the conversation would not be necessary since she is going to present something for 30 minutes. And then we will have material to initiate the conversation altogether. Yeah, but even though I think this would be the best way to start it, I guess I have some impressions to share with you. I've been reading Thaís' work for some time now, but not with this intensity that I had to. Not with the intensity I had to read it for the last 2 days, right? Preparing to join the conversation with you guys. And some ideas occurred to my mind, and I would like to share them with you. On a text recently published on Bloomsbury, Making It Heard, a History of Brazilian Sound Art, she is commenting on a passage by Angus Carlyle when he somehow compares the idea of being in front of a sound map. He proposes the image of the God's eye, someone who is kind of looking at it from above. And then comes a passage from Thaís' writing, which, by the way, I find amazing. And this phrase is something, it's so impressive for me that I would like to read it for you. It's like, and then I quote, "Even the most transparent field recordings in which creators erase as much as possible the traces of their presence and the machinery used, even those transparent field recordings produce this canceling effect of the absolute powers inherent to the verticalized point of view of the map, because they carry in an indelible way the marks of the horizontal life on the surface, reverberating the human scales of places. It's almost like it has a revolutionary tone in it, which I find amazing. And then I started to think about other ideas, other texts by Thaís, and it reminded me of the name of her blog, which in Portuguese is Escuta Nova Onda. I guess I tried to think about how to translate this to English. Then it came to my mind like this joke of listen new wave, which would be something like inviting people to listen to British music from the 80s. I think it would be correct, but maybe the best translation I could find is like the new wave of listening. So it would bring a tone of this tone of this idea of a revolutionary thing. It matches with the title of her blog and with her work in general, in which she is really trying to push listening to the foreground. Even in academic ambience such as communication and media studies, in which I would say I'm not a media scholar, far from that, but I would say that she faced lots of difficulties because it is probably a new thing to treat sound as not the recording devices or the media that carry sound, but sound itself. So how to proceed with that clash? It probably requires this impetus, this revolutionary impetus. So let's hear Thaís' presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a good translation, I guess. It's just the point. Well, this passage of Angus Carlyle, it's just like one of the last things I'm going to talk here in my short presentation. And yes, I think that many criticism on sound maps, because we have some papers written about sound maps. They mix critiques of the map theory and critiques coming from the theory that on field recording, for example, or phonography, and merge these critiques, but I don't think it's the right way to do. and that's what we are going to talk about. Well, I have the abstract of the thesis. I'll read it because I'm not going to go to many points here, and we have a lot of things. So I'll read the abstract, then we go to simple text I wrote for this presentation. So this work investigates sound mapping, and the title is just like the title of this seminar, without the field. It's just recording. This work investigates sound mapping within Sybille Krämer's theoretical framework on what a medium is. According to the philosopher, in a transmission, medium is what seems to disappear behind the sensible surface of what comes to appearance. Based on her ideas, we have this thing in Brazilian academic writing that we call a single person we. It's not right, but we go with the flow. So I developed a theoretical tool called mediological dial in order to auscultate. Help me, Michael, with the English. Auscultate media processes involved in the constitutive practices of this new cartography. My aim was to identify what becomes transparent, and which opacity corresponds to it in the course of a chain of transmissions. So it's something that never ends. The media processes are never something. It's always something in motion. So everything can be a medium, but you have to look at the process to see what is the medium in that specific moment. Okay, we assumed Krämer's proposal of a media critical epistemology, understanding that the messenger and the trace of the messenger, the representation and the conditions of its production are two inseparable dimensions of media, as well as two complementary and interdependent epistemological positions. So we have some, in academic writing, we have these themes. I am Flamengo, I don't know, Botafogo. We join specific themes, but what she's proposing is something that is not one thing or another, it's both. So we have to think this like two sides of the coin.
Okay, so now I will go live again, hopefully, once I can see that this is connected, and we'll go from there. Okay, I think actually, I think we were continuing to stream that whole time. So, but now it is back connected as far as I can tell. Let's hope for the best. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties, Thaís.
Okay, so let's start. Are you listening? Okay. So field research was also guided by Robert Keating and Martin Dodge's post-representational approach to cartography. They suggest tracking how a particular process of map making emerges. Reconstituted the development of the radio Aporee. It's okay?
Now it is, I guess.
Yeah, cut out for a second, but we'll just have to keep going.
Okay. So I reconstituted the development of the radio Aporee platform sound map since its origins in the net art of the 1990s, and found a situation in which sound is a fundamental element in a strategy to review media spaces. In the context of this research, sound map is considered a hybrid, audiovisuality made possible by the digitalization, and which operates between two strong traditions, the map and the sound recording. So this is the abstract, and now I'll start something a little lighter. If you look at the issue of the Journal of Sonic Studies published last week, you will see a paper that summarizes my master's research in urban planning here in Brazil in area of city culture and politics. The paper is called The Triangle and the Thin Biscuit, Reverberations of a Walking Practice, something that happens here in the city of Fortaleza, where I am now. And it describes my attempt to understand the process of territorialization of a particular type of street vendors who work in the city of Fortaleza. In Brazil, if you want to pursue an academic career, you are almost obliged to do your PhD in the same area as your bachelor's degree. Otherwise, we will find a lot of difficulties to fit into university hiring processes. So I went back to the communication area for my PhD. But the area did not seem to want to investigate the sound of the environment or listening or even sound recording, which is over a century old. Almost all research is focused on the internet. So I started thinking about something that could involve both listening and the fundamentals of audio recording, and finally getting to the issue of the digital. No phenomenon seemed to me better to be explored as an object of research at that time than sound maps, especially since I come from the urban studies in which space, territory, landscape are fundamental concepts. So that's why I became interested in sound maps. But I also needed to know how to approach sound maps from the communication area. And I ended up trying something new, which is media philosophy. A lot of philosophers philosophizing in German about what late 20th century philosophers could say about the internet, because obviously the internet was something really important. So they started to do some questions, but they were very skeptical about this whole new media thing and began to do more basic questions like, what's new in this media? And finally, as good philosophers, they ended up asking themselves, and what, after all, is a medium? Since that was the question I always asked myself as a undergraduate student, and I had never seen anyone dedicate herself to answering it, perhaps because McLuhan became out of fashion since after Raymond Williams made his critique. So I took my doctorate to finally pay attention to the people who in the internet age started trying to answer this question, specifically, what is a medium? I started to study this book by Sybille Krämer, a German philosopher. I'm not going to go deeper because there's no time, but there are two things we need to keep in mind. One, how she conceives the idea of medium, and two, maps are her test case, but Krämer deals with the classical visual maps of cartography, no sounds involved, coming very quickly to the issue of digitalization of computer-generated maps as visualizations of increasingly complex digital databases. I will briefly explain the first one, what is a medium, and then we go to Radio Aporee Maps. A medium for her group of philosophers, because it's a kind of group, and there's a lot of discussion, is a third between two parts, a medium of perception, a third between two parts it's actually a place. So we have to, yes, there is a relation. Some philosophers think that we don't need to go to the materiality of the medium, but she does. So for her, a medium of perception has necessarily the ability of disappearing to let something else appears in its place. We are currently watching this transmission through our computers, but a kind of magic happens that makes the computers, the apparatus, disappear from our perception as objects. Its materiality seems to disappear in front of us. Everything we perceive is what is being transmitted. My voice, my face, my discourse. But if the internet goes down or the power goes out, the medium is no longer transparent. It becomes opaque to us. This can also happen because we deliberately want to see behind what is being transmitted, for example. This is what Pierre Schaeffer did when he thought of the sound object. He wanted to strip the sound of what it conveyed, and which was conventionalized, what we understand in the place of sound, of what had a certain meaning, in order to perceive the characteristics of the sound itself. That's what Pierre Schaeffer did. In this sense, sound is the medium. It usually disappears to make something else appear. We hear the neighbor's dog barking, not the sound waves. Sound waves are transparent in the time of transmission. This approach helped me to include the non-human in the transmission, because in communication, we tend to think of communication from the position of the human and almost completely limited to the human. But when we listen carefully to the ambient sound, we are most of the time hearing non-human sounds. The wind, that's why we have the fan is off here, animals and other events that cannot be said to exist for the function of communicating. So we can talk more about perception here than dialogical communication. It's not bad for me. If the philosophers of the media philosophers, provided me with the grounds for thinking about the medium of perception, the artists provided me with practices to be observed. Fortunately, I was able to meet and interview several sound map makers. I even walked with Ian Royce, who created the London Sound Survey, and with Lilian Nakaodo, who created the CWB sound map here in Brazil. And I wrote about her work in a chapter of this new book, and Paulo is in a chapter 2. But I ended up dedicating the thesis to the case of Aporee Maps. Udo Knoll received me for a quick chat at his home studio in Berlin in 2016. And I really don't know if the fact that he's German, as well as many of the media philosophers, explains the fact that he's concerned about making the Aporee Maps and other projects of the Aporee platform, such as the radio, which he calls the stream, and the app called Miniatures for Mobiles, are more in tune with the media problem that I seek. Udo is the one who most reflects on the medium among the artists I met. That's why he's on my thesis. That's why Liliana Caodo appears on the book, because we are talking about a Brazilian artist in practice. So some researchers criticize Aporee for understanding that it reinforces the idea of the map as a portrait of nature, like a representation of the world as it is. Something that has been criticized by postmodern map theory. This theory challenges the representation of space by cartography and points to the intentions behind every map, and has to do with power over the territory and over the worldview. Long story, let's just move on. What I realized was what Angus Carlyle also realized. He said, when sound infiltrates the online map, the God's eye views, remember of the critique of the postmodern map theory, everywhere that omnipotent, instantaneous, disembodied, all-processing eye starts to become distracted, to lose its certainties. Part of the reason for this, still Carlyle, is that screens pockmarked with craters of recorded sound contradict any implication of lofty height to be delivered from the GeoMap interface itself. Now, in my understanding, what makes this happen is that the recordings on Aporee Maps are transparent as field recordings. That is, they are what we call good quality recordings, more linked to the high fidelity ideal in the context of phonography. Perhaps it is the much criticized high fidelity standard of Aporee Maps field recordings that allows for a crack in the visual map as a construct of totalizing the world of European culture and modern thought. But what we must not lose sight is that sound maps are neither the classic map of cartography nor the classic field recording. It is a hybrid thing that is only possible in the context of digitalization. And Udo is an artist who is constantly playing with the opacity and transparency of the sound map itself as a medium and as that hybrid medium. If you go to the homepage of the platform, please, Michael, it will not be a map like Google Maps appearing. It's not what you will see. Many people writing about sound maps have this critique. Oh, you go to the sound map, and the first thing you see, it's a photography from above.
So I'm not sure how this works exactly with the focus, but I'm just gonna say something now so that you guys can see what she's speaking about, because then the screen will come to me. Tell me when you would like me to play it, please.
Just play it, please. it's a new field recording. It's such a wonderful work because it's ongoing. It's an ongoing project. I think it's enough, Michael. Thank you. So sometimes the critiques about when you look at the sound map, what you see is this shot from above, and that's not what Udonal does. This is not a front page. You see, Aporee.org maps. This is not the home. If you go to the home, please, Michael, could you go to the home page? Aporee.org. What do you see? This is a representation of all the addresses of the locations of every single field recording in the database. So, Michael, could you pass the cursor so you have some movement if you go through?
I just want to tell everybody there's a couple modes on how you can see these things. So you can talk but if you click on my little box there, it should bring into focus my screen even when Thaís is talking. So right now I should be in focus because I talked, but should I click on anything, Thaís, or should I just move my
No,
cursor?
just move. So there's some movement, and what I want to say is that it is Udonal making the internet body of the map noticeable, apparent. He's also trying to make the digital behind the sound map appear to us. So he's just like every artist, but he's playing with the medium, with the media. But in his case, the medium is not just the field recording or the map. It's something that are mixed and digital, which is a different thing. So that's it. That's what I have to say for now. And I would say lots of things. Media philosophy is really fun. It helps us to think what we're doing, what artists are doing. And 2 years ago, in Curitiba, which is the city of Liliana Caodo, I had a course with another media philosopher, Dieter Mesch, and I had this question for him. What do you think about the term media artist? Because Udonal uses this term, media artist, because after reading what media philosophers are doing, thinking, what is clear is that every artist is a media artist, because every artist is dealing with the materials to do something, and that artists are very important for this kind of approach to media, because in communication we are trying to erase the presence, we are trying to avoid the noise in order to get a good communication, but the artists are trying to do something else, trying to discover something about what's behind and what the medium, the message or whatever. So if we look what artists are doing, are you listening to me? Okay, aqui tá okay. If we look at what artists are doing, we can see the medium, because it's very it's very hard to observe the medium when it's working, because it withdraws itself from the process. So how can we study something that's always disappearing? So look at what artists are doing. That's the answer. That's it. Finished.
Yeah, thank you, Thaís. Thank you very much. Actually, this was one of the questions that rose through my readings of your texts, that you are always like mentioning the artist, this figure, oh, the artist. And at some point, you even say something in the lines of, no one is, and this is just me paraphrasing you, I don't have the quotes here. Maybe no one is interested in doing this old practice anymore, but and so you go to proposing that the sound map is a field for the artist, and this kind of caught my attention, right? I wanted to ask you, well, why is it that the data shows you that, okay, everyone doing a sound map is an artist with other projects? What do you think is the attraction there for artists to work with and you are very careful to say that the sound map is not a map, a classical one. It's something else. It's a hybrid. It's what you call the audio visuality. Yes. But what do you think? I can't remember the author that you are quoting. But what do you think is the deal with artists and sound maps? Could it be run from a scientific point of view, detached from an artistic practice, whatever? What do you think?
Well, you have to look at what every single one is searching for, because you have lots of different projects of sound maps. So and some researchers just put them in a box and categorize it. Just sound maps are this, because I saw every single sound map, and this is what a sound map is. Of course, I had to do this, because how do you start reading something about a sound map, and what is it? It's the first question. So I have to say, wow, basically I'm talking about this kind of artifact, let's say. So, but you have like Robbie Keating and Dodges say, you have to look at the personal way of the artist, because they are not looking for the same thing. They have different things in mind when they are doing this. So we had a lot of projects in the first decade of the century, and everyone was trying to just let it was something new. It's okay. It's nothing wrong. So there were a lot of sound maps, but once again, why I paid attention to the Aporee Maps, because Udonal has one of the ideas that guided him to this thing was the same. He was a net artist in the 90s, so he's an artist that is still thinking about the internet. Not everyone is thinking about the internet per se when making a sound map. Maybe how to share my field recordings, and he's very serious about this. About the data collection of these field recordings. He's very careful with the database, let's say, and he has a plan to restart it, for example. So if everyone goes wrong, we can still start it again. So I don't know. We have to ask the artist what he wants with the sound map. I would say that.
If I might, could I make a couple comments and then a question? The comments are, again, I actually want to take this opportunity, since we didn't do it at the very beginning. I keep coming back, and maybe it's coincidental, but I think your what you have been saying in particular, to this Claude Shannon paper that I've been pushing on people, that is a mathematical theory of communication. And there he kind of says quite clearly in scientific terms that a channel, a medium, is something that transmits information. So that's kind of like the sterile objective thing. And I thought what was really poignant, what you were saying, is that kind of in a clear communication system, you've got a message, and then you want that message to be transmitted and decoded. But actually in art, there's kind of this noise in the system that artists play with to certain extents. And I think you kind of nailed it on the head with those sorts of things. So I wanted to just bring that paper up again, because I've been kind of telling people about it, and it just those themes keep coming back. And then the other thing, I think what I'm hoping for next week, again, I just talked to Paolo before it, is that I'll bring together two artists that don't know each other, but that really extend from what you're doing, and this idea of what is mapping and what is cartography. One of them, his name's Robert Blatt, and he has a bunch of pieces that he would claim are maps. And then another woman who works a lot with histories, and so I'm kind of combining two of our themes, hopefully, if they come. So that was then the second comment, which was to kind of see that these things extend and have these threads. But and then one more comment, which is my Jim Tinney used to have a really great story, which is that aliens used to come down from Earth, and they would kind of observe us, and they would go back to their superiors or their people, and they'd say, well, tell us about these beings that are on this planet. And they'd be like, well, they do a lot of the same things that we do. They eat, they need housing, they drink, they have to sustain themselves. But they do this really strange thing once in a while, is that they get together and they vibrate the air together. So I thought that it's a very beautiful story about, as you pointed out, that these things you've got this kind of transparent medium, but then we do these kind of beautiful things with it. But my question is this, so sorry for blabbing, but those things came to my mind and I wanted to share them and kind of promote the next week. But you've been focusing a lot on the internet and sound maps, but really this idea of cartography, and I'm even going to say a broader transduction, to transduce something. There's like, for a great piece is this Robert Ashley, it's called Rainforests, where you actually physically transduce these objects to make these sounds. And I think music is kind of imbued with mapping. Like, for example, we were talking the other day, you have a score. The score is transduced, transduces the idea from the composer to then be interpreted by the performer. I was just hoping you could give a little bit of a history of different forms of sound map, kind of, or mappings in general, this idea of transduction apart from the internet, because I imagine they exist. So sorry for blabbing, but I wanted to make
No, it's okay. I don't know if I can do this because I was so focused on this finding the media processes in sound map making that I didn't do this history, or I wish I could have read something about this, but no, maybe it's something that maybe I could do even to introduce the topic if I write a bit more on sound maps. But now, no, I just can't, because I focused on Lilian Nakaodo project, Ian Roy's project, trying to understand what they were trying to do, to understand what was behind and what was in front, you know?
I see. So this was kind of a focused study.
Yeah. And I talked to many sound map creators to understand what they were trying to achieve in order to understand what was behind and what was in front, which would be the message, let's say. Because each one has their own particular impulse to do this,
okay.
You know?
What's your next project then?
My next project.
Or what would be the extension of this one?
Maybe translated the thesis to English, and maybe going to hip hop. Sorry. So from street vendors to sound maps, and maybe now hip hop or practices on sound system, or how people that are into funk, carioca funk or Brasilia funk music is doing things here, doing something new because they are playing with a medium, you know. They are artists as well, and they can maybe help me to understand music and sound and technology in this place of the world, in Brazil, which is different because we don't have access to equipment like in the US or Europe. It's not that easy. So when we see people musicians in the Sahara Desert doing recording music with cell phones and sharing music through cell phones, and this is more like Brazil. So I'd like to understand what we are doing in this place, in this country, or in Latin America, which has a different background. Is it okay for you?
Oh no, yeah, it's great. I look forward to that. I think, I mean, the little I know of Brazilian funk, I think it's an amazing music. And they certainly seem to be using whatever resources they have very, very well. The carioca funk. I mean, you have those traditions here in the States too. So that sounds very interesting.
But I have nothing set up, not yet.
Yeah, I have another question, and this is kind of long, I guess. One of the things that I understood that was one of the points that was criticized in Udo Noll's work was the lack of metadata, apparently the lack of metadata, and he explains that in your text. I read it in your text for making it heard. That you were arguing that, and you actually heard from him that, oh, imagine what a collaborative and participatory thing this would be if for someone to upload a recording, they would have to go through the process of filling more than 50 annotation points or markers. And then you argue that, oh, if he loses something with the absence of the metadata, what is that? What is it that he gains? And you say what he gains is participation. What he gains is engagement. This is, I guess, the exact word that you use. And this is interesting because you can think of engagement in multiple ways, right? We are discussing medium, for instance, and Radio Aporee as the sound map as a medium. But for me, reading your text, it's like the medium is actually the platform, is what he calls the platform, because it generates lots of different, I will call it works, since we are discussing from the artistic point of view. So different works as the Radio Aporee, and then the sound map, which is a different thing. And he even thinks of an application of, yes. Then this is a kind of engagement. The creation of different projects is a kind of engagement. But the one that interests me most comes with your commentary that if you upload something to the Radio Aporee, probably you are engaged with field recording. And if you are engaged with field recording, you probably are engaged with modes of listening, which are different from the usual modes of listening. So I come back to the introduction, in which, I don't know, I had the impression almost all the time that you are pointing to the listening process as maybe the medium that through which every interest of yours would flow. But maybe this is just an impression, right? And I don't want to force anything. I mean, with the escutar quotation that you say that it's not about the map itself, it's about generating the possibility of cultivating a critical hearing. You know, it points almost to this street level, to the listening process. I don't know. This is me just. How I forgot the expression Michael used, babbling. I don't know. Sorry for elongating this too much, but I don't even know if this is a question. But that's it. If you want to comment.
No, yes. Well, when I talk about mediological dial, you have to tune the process, because the medium is always the next, you know? So yeah, sometimes the medium is the sound, sometimes the medium is another thing in the process. It's always changing and disappearing. So this is why it's so hard to shorten this presentation, because I have this dial going through the thesis, the part when I actually go into the Udo knows processes in creating this thing. So here is, I don't know if you can see. So everything is has to be in place in order to give the body has to be in this place with mobile in your hand, and you have to have the Apple installed and the connection and the phones, and you have to have a memory, a sonic memory of that place in order to feel something that he describes in this moment of his lecture. It's a lecture, not a conversation with me, but yeah, you have to have all these things together and all these conditions in order to have this feeling of listening something that happened in this place, but 10 years ago in a field recording this place. It's these conditions are superposed, but they all part of the media process that creates this listening experience. But I think there's something that leads me to this project in the sound maps in general, and I think that resonates in Udo Knoll's project and his aims in doing what he actually does until 2020, is that he's worried about how internet connects people in different parts of the world. This is the basics of internet, but we are always forgetting, especially now. So yeah, this is why he has radio in the name of the project, because that was the magic of the radio. Something that I can hear someone speaking in the other half part of the globe, you know. So the internet in the 90s, we were kind of surprised by this new age of it's just like radio again. and now we forget because it's so common. It's common sense now. But he's an artist that started there, and he's speaking of space. He's speaking of space, and sound delivers this experience of being in a place. So I think sound is a medium. The message in his work is both space and but mostly how internet connects people in distant places. So in the sense, sound is it's almost secondary. Listening is almost secondary, but it's a means to get where he wants to go. I think space and connecting people in different spaces is his main idea. And sound delivers the experience of being near someone in a distant place.
The homepage, sorry, Henrique, I just concluded. The homepage image is beautiful in this sense, with all the addresses, 1 over each other, right?
Exactly.
I wanted to comment upon the fact that I was searching here at the beginning for the nearest, the most near spot on the map to my house, you know. And well, it was a bit foreseeable. I mean, there were some students of maybe students of mine, or maybe because I worked at the School of Art and Technology, Oikabun, and then like the way they did it is obviously like they were students of the school where I worked, and I did not do this activity, but I can like imagine that it was done to like introduce to them and to the other students of the school uh, this kind of listening of place, like this kind of different way of listening to places, because I mean, we listen to place, but it's different. It's aesthetic listening to place, even if you're looking for information about the place and not just the sounds. In this sense, I think maybe the person who did this activity, like, used the idea of the map, of the sound map, as a way to introduce a new kind of listening, and not so much of connecting people, you know, but like introducing a world where people listen in a different way.
Yeah, the platform is opened for other people to use it. That's why he calls Rádio Aporee a platform, because a platform, and he's a coder, but as a coder, he sees himself as an artist, even as a coder. As a platform maker, what is a platform? It's something in the internet that gives you tools to do something. So the platform is also Udonal developing tools for people to do things. So it's okay. It's okay. It's what he wants to do as well. So I don't know. It's a very rich project, the platform, and everyone can use this. This is beautiful, and yeah, he has some rules, but it's his project. So I think, okay, he has the right to understand that the use has to be like in a certain way, like good quality recordings, for example, which is always something that it's just like his calcanhar de Achilles. How to say that in English? Something that it's
Achilles heel.
Exactly. So people are always criticizing his this rule of make place good recordings, good quality recordings. But okay, he wants the project to be a good one. So the field recording community, you know, guys, you know, field recordists are a bit tough in his makings as well. They want to erase themselves. Of course, not every one of them, but it's very common to have this transparent recording, you know. So he has to be in good with the community of recordists as well, because he's keeping this collection. It's important. So I'm not here to defend Udo Noll's project. I'm just doing what the geographers told me to do, let's say. Understand what the sound map maker wants to do in order to understand this particular cartography. But it's a collaborative project, and he thanks Rádio Aporee as a platform, as a set of tools that serves to the public, let's say.
So how, I have a couple questions regarding that. One would just be, how is he enforcing and curating the quality of the recordings? And two, I think, yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, you make the point about him, you know, wanting this to be transparent and therefore, you know, enforcing this idea of high quality recordings. But actually Cliff made a nice comment about the karaoke funk, that it's kind of lo-fi by necessity, but there's so much great lo-fi music out there and lo-fi recordings. So, you know, I guess the first question would be, you know, how is he enforcing that? You know, and also, and then I remember the third thing I wanted to ask is that then you get into this idea of, well, what is curation? So, you know, for example, you have, you know, Wikipedia, where anybody who's anybody can submit, track, you know, and it's self-policing in that sense, and it's decentralized and it's open. And then you have these platforms, one which I used to work for and couldn't stand it, like Wolfram Alpha, where it's all curated data and it's referenced. But actually it works worse because of that, because, you know, I was supposed to be the music guy, for example, but I don't know everything there is to know about music. But with these open source things, there's always someone in, you know, Saskatoon who knows exactly about that one bit of information and is going to kind of actually explain it the best. So yeah, my questions are, how does he enforce it? And how do you feel about these kind of curatorial practices?
Well, I think there are lots of lo-fi recordings in Rádio Aporee Maps. So I think that people are reading the rules and not listening to the sound map, you know? So he tries to keep the project like with a certain level. He cares about the quality of the work, and he's dealing with everyone on the internet. So it's okay. But if you really listen to the field recordings, you go into lo-fi recordings as well. So I think people are not listening to the sound map. He's just trying to keep the project, you know, but he's not making. I don't know. I don't think he's going to delete a file.
That's what I didn't understand. I didn't realize he wasn't. Okay, it was a suggestion, but he's not completely moderating everything.
No, he listens to almost everything, because you see, there are lots of field recordings a day. So in the last 24 hours, you have, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, I don't know. But there's a list of field recordings uploaded in the last 24 hours. So it's a huge project. If you look at the sound maps, they are not active, most of them, but he's keeping the project. So I don't know. I uploaded a bad file, bad quality file, and he talked to me. Hey, it's but I'm with some students, and he kept my field recording there.
I think that's actually more interesting. That then there becomes a conversation about what this map is, and that's actually what we were talking about. That I think that became a topic of conversation in one of the other sessions, about kind of the solidarity that you almost need to do to create a piece of music or to do an improvisation. And so that's kind of nice to see that extends itself to this thing that, as you pointed out, is neither field recording or cartography exclusively, but it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, you have people talking in a cafe. You have sometimes music, but not sometimes even lectures. I don't know. People upload lots of things, and he's very careful in keeping a sense of this is a place for field recordings, in a sense. So he doesn't want to get music, because there's a whole music. You have music industry to do this. Or maybe someone else can develop a sound map for live performances, but this is not his project. And I don't think why he has to do everything, embrace every single project, because otherwise Radio Aporee would lose his particularity. Let's say he has a function in the field recordists community.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I just thought about asking you, when he contacted you to say, oh, maybe this is not an ideal recording. I don't know how he approached you, but I wonder how he approached you. If he said anything about, oh, this is not an ideal recording because of A, B, C, D, whatever reasons he could give you. And a comment associated to this question is that, yes, it's funny how usually, and I guess this is common sense for people in the field, that field recording has this definition that connects the practice to hi-fi recordings of non-human produced sounds. And I guess for my personal practices, that field recordings could be a lot of other things. But returning to the question, because maybe it will tell us what field recording is to Udono and to this community which he supports, what did he say to you concerning the quality of the recording?
Let's see. Let me find the email. I think it's very short email. Let me say. Just 1 minute. No, it's just please take care. with the recording levels. This one clips 5,000 times, and I think about to delete it because of bad audio quality. But I started to. He didn't delete it. I started to talk to him. Well, I'm here with some students. We are in the a romaria. How do you say a procession?
A pilgrimage, maybe.
Yes, in Juazeiro do Norte. And you have these fireworks, you know, and the people, the priests, and it was a loudy context, and we didn't know we would have some fireworks. So, this is the context, and I explained it to him, and he was okay. It's still there in the sound map, you know. He's not someone that you cannot talk to. He's available to talk about the context.
And if you ever recorded in a context in which you did not know that you would get some fireworks, well, you know that this is the kind of thing that will happen. The dynamic range is like absurd. And I would say with this explanation that this is very much a recording of it has a high level of fidelity with everything around. Yes, with the instruments that you were carrying, with what you were recording prior to the fireworks, and so and so.
But I think it's also education on field recording. He's trying to be careful with the quality, you know. Maybe I was thinking of but I don't think he's going to do this, you know. I think it's more like education on field recording. What do you think?
Yeah,
because I'm not a field recordist. I'm not a field recordist, so I try to engage in the practice in order to understand what artists are doing, but I'm not a proper field recordist. So for me, it's okay to listen to someone telling me, be careful, you can get a better field recording, and the problem is that, you know. But maybe I'm too condescending because of my because I'm listening here, listening as I'm receiving. I'm trying to understand, so I'm open to whatever. Just tell me what you're doing, or, you know.
Yeah, you asked me what I think. Who am I to criticize anyone asking for audio quality? The people who are here know me as probably as one of the most picky people around with recording levels and whatever. But as a field recordist, if I can consider myself as a field recordist, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm crashing a party because I'm always trying to think. Actually, in one of those field recording Facebook communities, in which people were always posting things related to equipment and to what they do in order to monitor their audio and so. I once asked, yes, I understand that field recording is is heavily charged with technical questions and decisions. But as an artist, I wonder what else can field recording be? And the answers were, oh no, basically they shut me up. They told me, no, you should know what you want to record, or I don't even know if, except for Jazz Riley French, which is a recordist and also an artist, I would say. He came in and he even said, which is funny, connected to this conversation of ours, he said to me, oh, there is this other community in Facebook in which I think you should join us there. I mean, the definition of field recording, like connected to this heavily technical approach, and again, I love to do it. I love to check the input levels, if I'm using the right microphones, if I'm whatever. But I also did this project in Brussels, in which I recorded almost everything. Like, I would say 70% of the recordings I did there are really bad technically, because the term field recording was serving some other idea. And I really think it's a field recording project in which I would say that committing mistakes was decisive for what the project, for what this field recording project was. So also, I don't know if I answer your question, but this is me thinking out loud. I mean, I'm not criticizing him. I don't think there is any sense in doing that. But there is this thing about the field recording community, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that you're saying, yeah, that there could be so many other things, and I'm sure there are, and yeah, maybe there's different spheres of these things. What came to my mind is I have this friend, his name's Raven Chacon. He's got these pieces where he does field recordings, and then he amplifies them 1,000 times, and it's wonderful noise music, and it is field recording. So I think there's so many different things there. I always I'm like the worst. I'm the exact opposite of you, Paulo. I'm like the worst recordist ever. And so I guess I have a soft spot in my heart for anything that doesn't require technical skills or gear.
But I don't know if anyone is going to make a question, but I'd like to comment here. The thing is that the medium is a two-sided thing. So you can, as a platform, it serves to something. But it's a medium that Udo is playing with the platform, with the code, it's a two-side project. Do you understand? It has a function. Are you listening?
Yeah. I'm waiting for you to finish to make sure I understand.
Sorry. So you can do something with the medium. The medium is made for something, but you can also do something else specifically connected with the nature of the medium. So he's always, I think Udo is exploring this double structure of the, I don't want to use this word structure. It's not what I mean to, but this two sides of the medium, because the medium is always a bit a trickster. You have this image of the messenger, and Sybille Krämer brings this figure of the messenger. So she's talking about Jesus, or about Hermes. How's the god of Hermes?
That's
and or here in Brazil, Exu, from the Orishas, Exu, which is a messenger between two worlds. So he has this two sign. He's playing with signs because he's in the middle. So he knows something from one side, he enters the others. He's always changing. He has double face. So yeah, you can do a lot of things with a medium. Yeah, I think what Udonos do, and artists in general, you have this object, and he has so many different affects people in so many different ways, because the medium and the artist know how to deal with the media. Is a trickster, this figure that we can see in mythology, in Africa, in Greece, you know, in Christianism with Jesus. He's always this figure of the messenger. His service to a cause. I don't know. His service. He's in service, but he's also doing something else by his own.
He has agency. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why for me there's not one thing or another, and I think it's both. You have to tune in to one or another and see what happens. I'm interested in tuning in the processes to see what's happening.
Well, you could always like flip the coin with. You could think that a community is a medium as well, or a genre, or a well-established practice as well. You can always flip the coin for these things as well, maybe. Does anyone else have more questions, or because I mean I'm not finishing like everything, but we are at 8:40 actually. Does anyone else has more questions? Enrique does not.
I think if not, that would be a reasonable stopping point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Thaís.
Thank you very much.
Thaís, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. It was a pleasure to read lots of your text and your blog entries. It's really amazing. I recommend everyone to just check the Listen to New Wave blog. Escuta Nova Onda. This is a fantastic blog. I would also recommend for people who can read Portuguese, her doctorate thesis, which is called, I just read the introduction, but I mean, Escuta, gravação, plataforma web, fazer, mapa, sonoro como conjunto de práticas de mídia. I won't try to translate the title now, but it's available on the web. You can download it, you can read it. I also would recommend the text she wrote about Liliana Caodo's CWB sound map for the Making It Heard, a history of Brazilian sound art. The book is ridiculously expensive, but I heard that you can already find the PDF going on the web. I just heard, please, please don't, I'm not responsible for that anyhow, but I heard that the PDF is already on the
They
web.
are making it heard.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk, because you go into the master, then the PhD, and things start to get a bit where is everybody? You start to we don't have many people to talk to. We are getting more specific, and we lose some conversation, gets a bit difficult to. So thank you very much, and in the next year or two, I'll try to translate to English. I don't know how, if in papers, submitting to journals, but now it's something that I really like to do, but it's a different. It's so difficult to think now with this pandemic. We never know, because our currency is very cheap. So everything is gonna get harder for us here in terms of buying books, or it's not. They are becoming very expensive for us. Equipment, for example, even for those who have a better life in this country, it will be harder to get good equipment and good books, and it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, it's already very hard, I would say, to us.
Yeah.
As a country.
Well, maybe though it's getting. This is not a localized event though, so it's going to be getting hard, not equally, but at least to some extent for everyone.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can kind of at least keep these threads going, and yeah, like, I mean, there are some normalizing factors, like what we're doing here, which has some many negatives and some positives, and in the sense that we're kind of overcoming something together at a distance, but even though it's not the most ideal. So I hope that then next week, I'm kind of hoping I can get invite these folks that are going to be able to extend this thread that I think that you seeded so nicely. So.
Please, if you can, please read the paper on Journal of Sonic Studies, because I think I did something like a sound map without sound in that research, because I followed some street vendors and made a map of points of listening, and then I traced some courses, sorry, I'm already a bit tired of talking.
These things are, let's say, yeah.
But sometimes you can have sound maps without sound. You can map sound without sound.
I think, I really wish I just sometimes I wish I had more time, because this connection between one of the people I'm hoping to invite next week and your work and some of the things that you've said are extremely cogent and very parallel. And he does these really beautiful pieces that he would say are maps, but they're actually, in some of his cases, they're instructions on kind of what to do, but they're instructions that kind of take the form of a sound map. Yeah, I think it's just amazing how these things connect and intertwine, even if independently.
And there is also your piece, Michael. I've been through it. I don't know if I remember the name of the piece. And actually, I think now that you mentioned the name, I think you're answering to Robert in a kind of letter fashion. Maybe everything is a map.
Oh yeah, that's a text piece that says, I think it's called "Dear Robert, perhaps everything is a type of cartography."
Yeah. I've simplified it like the title. Right. Yeah, I read the paper from Thaís, the paper about the street vendors of Chegadinho, which is really, yeah, I would agree that you mapped, you sound mapped, or you mapped sound practices without the sound, without the sound object. Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's possible. because of the concept of map. So you can map sound without sound because of the concept of mapping.
Yeah. The name of this text is, again, the name of the text? The Triangle and the Thin Biscuit. Reverberations of a Walking Practice. Yeah. It's on the Journal of Sonic Studies. I guess it's the last edition of the Journal of Sonic Studies. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm already looking forward for the next session.
Well, if we can, I need to. But again, thank you, Thaís. I really appreciate it, and I'm gonna cut the stream now. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night, Thaís. Bye.
Bye.
Stay well, everyone. Bye, Henrique. Bye.